Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So I'm breaking down the Monday Night Football Showdown Slate between the Baltimore Ravens and the Las Vegas Raiders, and what should be a pretty interesting slate here. I think there's several talking points. Where do we want to go with captain? Do we want to use a quarterback? I don't usually like to, but I think it's a little bit different tonight with Lamar Jackson under center. And what the heck do we do with both backfields here? The Raiders just learned that Josh Jacobs is now questionable for this game with an illness. We just learned that last night, so I'll have to see what happens there. And the Baltimore Ravens backfield has been completely wiped out over the past couple weeks. No Justice Hill, no Gus Edwards, no J.K. Dobbins. Now we have a bunch of veterans plus Tyson Williams, the dusty legs of Devonta Freeman and Le'Veon Bell. Could potentially get called up from the practice squad. We'll have to wait and see. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. We're talking picks, strategy, and lineups here throughout these seasons. If you think that sounds cool and you want to hang out for the rest of the season, you might as well hit that subscribe button so you get notified whenever I happen to post new content. And if you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that if you want access to my spreadsheets, optimizer, Discord community, all that fun stuff. And at least this video is sponsored by Prize Picks. I'm sure most of you know what it is by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified, just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions, or anything like that. Just you versus the props that they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, for new signee over on Prize Picks, you can use code CPEN to get a free money bonus. That's an instant deposit match up to $100 when you tell them I sent you. I think that's it for the plugs for the most part, so without further ado, let's dive right into today's video. And as always, we'll start with the quarterback position. Up top, we'll have Lamar Jackson at $12,400, and I'm not one to typically put the quarterback in the captain spot too often. Like, I don't just actively fade it, but it's not my favorite thing to do. I typically like to get running backs, wide receivers, or an elite tight end, whatever it may be. But Lamar Jackson is a different animal. We're kind of getting two players in one where he can throw the ball fine. I mean, not really a big threat in the passing game, but he can do a lot of damage on the ground. And with all three starting running backs out for the Baltimore Ravens, I don't think they're going to run Tyson Williams into the ground 20 plus times here or get Latavius Murray too involved because he just joined the team earlier this week. Lamar Jackson is going to get double-digit carries in this game, maybe push for 15, should do a lot of damage on the ground. He's going to operate more than likely as the RB1 in this offense as well as the QB1. Heck, by week 4, maybe he's the wide receiver 1. The way injuries are going for the Baltimore Ravens, I don't think we can rule that out. I realize he is pretty expensive here, but he is far and away my highest projected player. Like, there's a bunch of guys that are kind of around the same tier like Derek Carr, Darren Waller, but Lamar Jackson is just way above the rest, and I feel like he's almost an absolute must-play here. I would feel fine just lock-buttoning him. Not saying you have to lock-button him in the captain spot. Really hard time fading him in really any format here because he's going to be very chalky. And I think you're going to have to make a stand. You want to be way underweight on Lamar Jackson. You want to be balls to the walls and go all in. I totally don't care either way. I prefer being overweight on Lamar Jackson because I definitely think he's the best play here. He gets a good matchup versus the Raiders. We have a 15.5 point over-under with a 4-point spread in the Ravens' favor. Team total north of 27. And the Raiders' defense was not very good whatsoever last season. 26 DVA versus the pass. They're pretty bad versus the run too, which is what I kind of care most about when it comes to Lamar Jackson because he does most of his damage on the ground. About 270 passing yards per game, and there were 26 versus quarterbacks. And last season, Lamar Jackson averaged around 70 rushing yards per game, which is kind of like a built-in 1 to 2 passing touchdown floor just because of the damage he can do on the ground. Anything he does to the air is just kind of icing on top of the cake. And on the flip side of this game, we have Derek Carr below 10K, which I do like that price point for a quarterback in what should be a pretty high-scoring game with a pretty tight spread. Carr does have some decent options to get the ball to, one of the best tight ends in football, and Darren Waller. Henry Ruggs, the former first-round pick from last season, wasn't exactly great, but the upside is there. Brian Edwards, I think he might emerge this season in his second year. Josh Jacobs happens to be out there, going to be relying on the passing game even more so I'll have to wait and see on that. But the price point's not bad. If you can fit him in your flex spot, great. Don't think he's really a captain play for me. Cash games, just want to get a really safe flex spot. Derek Carr is definitely a viable option, even though he's not my favorite. Versus Baltimore's defense isn't exactly great. They typically always have a pretty good defense. I will say Marcus Peters being out because he also got injured with Gus Edwards that day. It's definitely a boost for the Raiders offense because he's a pretty darn good corner. Below 10K definitely puts him in consideration for me. Moving on over to our lineup, and keep in mind, make your own judgment, make your own lineups. I'm just building something on the fly here to see what we could maybe work with as I talk throughout this video. And we're going to start with the captain spot. I'm not sure if I want to fit in Derek Carr yet, but I know for sure I'm playing Lamar in the captain spot, at least for this example video, because it's a lot of money, and I want to make sure that we can make this work comfortably. So we'll plug him in here. Close to $20,000 in salary use just on one player, but I think given the slate that we have and the circumstances for the Ravens with all the running backs being out, Lamar Jackson pretty much operating as the RB1 and the QB1 for this offense with a 50.5 point over-under in this game, 27 point implied team total. I think he makes plenty of sense jamming in there just because of his upside and his pretty high floor. And moving on to the running backs, the unfun part of this video because both backfields are looking a little bit murky as of right now. Usually the Raiders, it's kind of solidified that Josh Jacobs is going to get the majority of the touches, not big in the passing game. Kenyon Drake's probably going to see a little bit of that. The problem is right now we have Josh Jacobs listed as questionable due to an illness, and we just got that news, I believe, in the evening on Sunday, so I'm not sure what is going to happen here. I'm not sure if he's leaning towards playing, how severe the illness is. It's pretty much just a wait-and-see approach here. If Josh Jacobs is good to go, he's going to probably get close to 20 touches in this game. I will say I don't love the matchup here. Ravens were decent versus running backs last season, kind of mid-pack, but a little bit better than that DVOA-wise, and just in terms of points given up to the position last year. They're also 4-point dogs, which isn't anything too substantial. It's not like it's a 2-score game, at least projected in Vegas. I think they'll keep this game close, and the Raiders are going to want to run the ball with Josh Jacobs and probably grind the clock out to keep the ball out of Lamar Jackson's hands. So I think he's a fine volume play, $8,400. Not a flashy play here, not really involved in the passing game too much. You can get a target or two, but nothing you can really bank on too much. He happens to be out. Kenyon Drake is going to be sliding into the RB1 role here with Peyton Barber, who they just got $2,000. Soon they probably split carry, although he's going to mainly kind of slide into the Josh Jacobs role, but maybe more of a split there. But we're going to have to wait and see what happens here. Kenyon Drake, though, is a talented running back, $7,200, $1,200 cheaper than Josh Jacobs. He would definitely be in play for me if he happens to be out. And as far as the Ravens go, I think it's Tyson Williams or bust. I don't think I really want to mess around with Latavius Murray. They could activate a guy like Le'Veon Bell, Devonta Freeman. Seem unlikely, to be honest. John Harbaugh said that Le'Veon Bell is still getting his legs underneath him, which I think that's kind of code word for saying he just kind of sucks, which he does. He was very washed last year. I don't think he's going to be good this year. Latavius Murray will definitely be the guy to own in this backfield, I think, in weeks to come. But as of right now, for this week, Tyson Williams is going to be the guy. Latavius Murray should get some work. I just don't think it's going to be anything substantial just due to the fact that he just joined the team not too long ago, so he's still getting his feet wet. And to be honest, I don't really like any of these running backs a lot because Lamar Jackson is going to be the main guy here. He's going to be the main source of rushing yards for this team. Tyson Williams, he should see a decent amount of work. I don't think we're going to see like a full-on bell cow roll where it gets 25 carries and a couple of targets. Lamar Jackson doesn't throw the ball to running backs anyway. $6,800 though. It's actually a good matchup versus the Raiders, and they are 4-point favorites on the road here. Last season, they were 28th DVA versus the run and 29th versus running backs, allowing the 4th most points per game with over 100 rushing yards and over a rushing touchdown. But again, I think that kind of works in Lamar Jackson's favor more than anything else. Tyson Williams is a fine play at his price point, but I definitely don't think he's an absolute must play. Moving on to the wide receiver position, I know Lamar Jackson is not the most prolific passer out there. Many times last season, he had below 200 passing yards. But just for the sake of correlation, I want to get some pass catching options up with him. Now, I will say my favorite pass catching option with him is not on this page. He happens to be in the tight end spot. But if I had to roster any wide receivers, Marquise Brown would be my first option, although that does reflect in the price point, but he's a down the field threat. Not really my favorite wide receiver out there, skills-wise, but I think he'll be fine versus the Raiders defense. Sammy Watkins is new to the team this season, $5,200. You can get a pretty steep discount off of Marquise Brown. He should have a decent role here. Should definitely get a handful of targets, and best time to play Sammy Watkins is the beginning of the season. He isn't hurt yet, which we know is probably going to happen at some point. And after that, it kind of gets pretty ugly. Devin Duvernay is an option at $2,600. You really can't expect much volume here, but he is a returner for this team. So if you want the double dip, if you want to use the Ravens defense and then Devin Duvernay, you get double points there if he happens to get a return touchdown. That doesn't happen like hardly ever, but it's still possible. We have seen it happen before. If you are looking for a little bit of a double dip action there with Duvernay. And then moving on to the Las Vegas wide receiver group, it's not a lot of great options here, but I do like some of their price points, especially Hunter Renfrow at $2,800. Now, if we are stacking up the Ravens, we're going to want to run back with one of these pass catching options. Now, the best one of them all is not any of these wide receivers. It's actually the tight end and Darren Waller. And funny enough, on both teams here, I think the best pass catching option is going to be a tight end. So these guys are kind of secondary options for me, but I'm definitely going to be rostering some of them. But that price point on Hunter Renfrow looks really good at $2,800. We know he's going to get targets. He's just not a big exciting player just due to the fact that his ADOT, he's more the possession wide receiver in this offense, so he had an ADOT of 7.1 last season, a 12.48 market share of the team's air yards, and a 15% target share. But that's not bad at $2,800. He averaged close to 5 targets per game last year, 41 yards, and 3.5 catches. I know, it's not exciting whatsoever, but if he finds the end zone at $2,800, he's going to be one of the better value plays in the entire slate, and he makes things work. If we're going to use a near $20,000 Lamar Jackson in the captain spot, trust me, we have to find some value somewhere. I think Hunter Renfrow is going to be a very popular option paired up with a guy like Lamar in the captain spot just because it's a good source of salary relief, and we know there's guaranteed volume. And then besides Renfrow, we have Henry Ruggs and Bryan Edwards. I think Bryan Edwards, don't look at the numbers last year. I think these are going to be vastly improved on the opposite side of Henry Ruggs. Although I will say Henry Ruggs, he might be more of the boomer bust option here. If we're looking at his numbers last season, he was a down the field threat, had an ADOT of 17.4 compared to Edwards of 5.8 and Renfrow of 7.1. 21% market share of the team's air yards this season. Wasn't a big volume guy, only averaged around 2 catches and 3.3 targets per game. But I do like the upside here. This is not the greatest matchup in the world versus Baltimore, but Marcus Peters going down definitely will help these wide receivers out a little bit. And with them being 4-point dogs and Josh Jacobs being questionable, I had to throw the ball more than they like to in this game. So just trying to find some pass catching options to pair with Lamar Jackson. Like I said, I want to get Mark Andrews in, but we haven't talked about the tight end spot yet, so I'll wait. I'll refrain from putting him in yet. But as for wide receiver, I like Marquise Brown. I don't mind Devin Duvernay just because he's a punt option. I don't mind Sammy Watkins. I think just for right now, though, we're going to plug in Marquise Brown at $7,600. And if we do that, we still have around $6,000 left per player. Throw in a cheap option or a kicker. I still think we can make a decent looking lineup, even though Lamar Jackson is super expensive in that captain spot. If we want to find a value wide receiver just for the run back, we have Hunter Renfrow at $2,800. I already talked about him being a very good value play in this slate. Once you throw him in, we have $7,000 left per player, which makes it look even better. Going to the tight end spot, I actually think these are the two best pass catching options to pair with your quarterbacks on this slate. Darren Waller, one of the best tight ends in football, our lead option, one of the top overall projection plays in the entire slate. The problem is he is super expensive. I already have Lamar Jackson in there, and like I was talking about with my lineup, I have Lamar in. I have his top wide receiver, Hollywood Brown, and then I have Hunter Renfrow as my cheap option for the Raiders, which I could obviously switch that around a little bit. That leaves me $7,000 left per player, so I plug Darren Waller in. He's close to $11,000. We might end up getting forced to using a guy like Devin Duvernay. I'm not sure I want to do that. Yes, some lineups I can. I want some Darren Waller exposure when I have Lamar Jackson in the captain spot. But we'll have to wait and see how our build looks. But Darren Waller, obviously one of the top options here. Looking at last season's numbers, close to a 28% target share, 60% weighted opportunity share, close to 9 targets per game. And while Baltimore can be kind of tough on tight ends, I don't really care. Mark Andrews, $9,000 is a nice soft matchup versus the Raiders. And if you want to pair somebody up with Lamar, I think Mark Andrews is the most preferred option here. There's a lot of touchdown upside with Mark Andrews. That's a good matchup versus the Raiders. We have a high implied team total. Don't look quite as good compared to Darren Waller, but he still had around 25% target share last season. The weighted opportunity share not too far off, close to a 30% market share of the team's air yards, and scored a touchdown in half the games he played in last year. And he's about $2,000 cheaper than Darren Waller, plus he has more correlation with our quarterback. And then outside of those two, yeah, Foster Moreau may be good for 1 or 2 targets per game, but if you're rostering him, you better hope that the target's in the end zone and he happens to catch it. Eric Tomlinson, no thank you, and no thank you to everybody else. Even though Josh Oliver does grade out as a decent point per dollar option, just because he's absolutely free, and I'm getting like a point or two for him, which, yeah, it looks good on paper, like a projected 13, 14, 15x, but it's not really worth that much when you kind of factor in everything else. One of these tight ends in, since I have Lamar in this lineup, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get up to Derek Carr, unfortunately. Let's just plug in Mark Andrews. If we do that, we have $6,000 left per player. I think we might end up using actually one of these kickers tonight, preferably Justin Tucker, just because I think the Ravens are going to put up more points. So we have $6,000 left, which we can definitely work around with. As defense and kickers go, I don't really like talking about these guys because they're really hard to project. Like kickers, if they hit their field goals, they hit their field goals and they become decent value plays. If not, it is what it is. You just kind of have to get a little bit lucky there and hope drives stall if they move the ball a little bit and they're in field goal range. As far as defenses go, I would not double up on defense unless this is projected to be a low-scoring game, but with Vegas having this at 50.5, I think both teams are going to be able to put up some points. If I had to pick one, though, if like you're itching to play a defense for some reason, the Ravens would be the preferred option as they're 4-point favorites with a 23.25 implied team total against them. To be honest, I can't really see myself playing much of any, if any, of these defenses, and I definitely wouldn't play both together. If you really want to play defenses, at max, I would say pick one on tonight's slate with this high over-under. And kickers, if I had to pick between the two, give me one of the best kickers of all time and Justin Tucker at $4,000. I think there'll be plenty more scoring opportunities for the Baltimore Ravens. Could lead to a big game for Justin Tucker. Daniel Carlson on the other side, $3,600. The Ravens defense, while you can with the ball on them sometimes, they're not that terrible, and the Raiders offense is pretty good, but they're not great, and they're not terrible. So this could be like a perfect storm for Carlson where the Raiders are moving the ball fine. They get past midfield at 30-yard line, and they end up stalling out a little bit, which would be field goal city for Carlson. But again, I'm not trying to project kickers. If they fit in your lineup at the end, sure, go for it. Be my guest. So if we just try to fill out the final pieces to this lineup, and again, I'm building this on the fly, so don't put too much into it. I'm just trying to see what can fit here. So we have $6,000 left per player. I think Justin Tucker would be fine to plug in. I don't think it's the most optimal way to go. It does kind of limit our upside a little bit because kickers can't throw the ball, run the ball, or catch the ball, or score touchdowns. So you're kind of limited to 3-some-point field goals throughout the game, which is really never that fun, although it can work out on some slates. If you want to go boom or bust, we have Henry Ruggs, we have Sammy Watkins there. That could be another pass-catching option with a guy like Lamar Jackson. So let's just, for example, throw in Sammy Watkins. Leave us $1,600 left per player, which we would be able to get Tyson Williams. I know it's not maybe the best correlation play with Lamar Jackson, but you got a 5-man Ravens stack, running back with a guy like Hunter Renfrow. I don't hate it. Also go with the pass-catching option for the Raiders like Bryan Edwards or Henry Ruggs if you want to leave some salary on the table. But if you just want to leave zero, you have Lamar Jackson, pass catchers, and Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews, and Sammy Watkins. You have the starting running back for this team just due to people dying off and getting injured, and Tyson Williams. And you have the run back for the Raiders and Hunter Renfrow. leaves you 0 money on the table. I don't think that looks too bad overall, but again, play around with it. If you don't use Lamar Jackson in the captain spot, find yourself having a lot more flexibility throughout the rest of your lineup. It's just, I really think Lamar Jackson will end up being optimal in the captain spot, assuming he has the game that I think most people project. So let's just say you want to go with a cheaper guy like Hunter Renfrow. If you put him in the captain spot, you can get a lot of stuff working in your lineup. Like, you can pretty much do anything you want. The problem is, I would say the ceiling for Hunter Renfrow is quite capped, so I'm not sure it's exactly the way I want to go, just because those 1.5 points can add up very, very quickly, and you could fall behind quick. You're going to have to hope that Hunter Renfrow has a ceiling game for the most part, but if you do that, it leaves you $17,000 left per player. You like Sammy Watkins to a Derek Carr, that leaves you $200 on the table. Or you could probably go up to Darren Waller here, move down to Derek Carr, that leaves you $6,000 left. You could throw in a guy like Bryan Edwards, Sammy Watkins, you name it. It allows you a lot more flexibility. Not saying I want to go Renfrow in the captain spot, but he's definitely an option at that price point. You can save a little bit more money. You could get Darren Waller in the captain spot, although it is quite expensive. Obviously, we're going to have to take a few guys out of here. Maybe you drop a guy like Marquise Brown, get a dirt cheap Devin Duvernay, who should see some slot action. Not sure we're going to see a heavy dose of targets, but there is always the chance to return a touchdown. If you happen to go that route, you can get Justin Tucker in the flex spot, and that doesn't look too bad. You got Darren Waller, Duvernay, Lamar Jackson, Andrews, Bryan Edwards, Justin Tucker. Some things out there, so make sure you use your own judgment. Take a lot more time than I just did making a lineup, because I'm just trying to see what can fit for you guys quickly. With that being said, I think that'll be pretty much it for the video. And if you did find this video helpful in any way possible, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. You do get access to a lot of extra content, including the optimizer, which I do have updated for the Showdown Slate. And you can hop into the Discord community, which we do have a fun group of guys and gals over there if you do want to come check it out. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by PrizePicks, just you versus the projections. And as of right now, if you're new signing over on PrizePicks, you can get a free money bonus up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. If you guys enjoy watching the game tonight, see you guys in the next one for the first look video for week 2.